On the day of the party, everyone started playing Truth or Dare, and it just so happened that Ryan drew a truth card. The friends egged him on to describe me in one word. Ryan downed his drink and calmly uttered a single word. Coincidentally, I happened to walk in at that exact moment and heard him say it. He completely pretended not to see me and just urged everyone to continue the game. The game went around again, and this time it was my turn to draw a truth card. The question was the same. Leaning back on the sofa, I slowly replied with one word, fake. Ryan, upon hearing it, suddenly smashed his glass and glared at me angrily. Claire, what do you mean by that? I met his gaze and retorted flatly, exactly what it means, and I can't stand men who wear heavy makeup. The entire room fell dead silent. Ryan straightened up, removed his hand from the smooth shoulder of the girl beside him, and stared at me with eyes as cold as knives. Claire, are you trying to break up? I sipped my drink leisurely, not letting his accusation affect my mood. After all, he had been humiliating me for ages. Calling me his girlfriend was more like calling me a pastime for when he was bored. Everyone's eyes darted between the two of us, not daring to make a sound. Ryan, seeing no response, grew visibly impatient. He stood up, stepped over 7 or 8 people, and came right up to me. Claire, are you deaf or mute? How many times have I told you? You must answer my questions immediately. Why are you being so disobedient today? With that, he grabbed my wrist and looked down at me. Those eyes, usually so full of affection, were now filled with rage. In his mind, if I wasn't obedient, I was embarrassing him in front of his friends. I was being defiant. Leaning against the sofa, I brushed his hand away impatiently and said, Ryan, I told you you're too fake, playing the filial son in front of family, acting like a rich, successful young man among friends, and pretending to be deeply devoted to your girlfriend, when in reality, you're just a useless leech relying on your parents and women. Did I miss anything? Ryan's usually confident face instantly froze, turning deathly pale. His Adam's apple bobbed a few times, and someone in the private room let out a low scoff, followed by hushed whispers and mocking laughter. Ryan leaned in close, gripping my wrist tightly as he hissed through gritted teeth, Claire, what's gotten into you today? I was just telling the truth earlier. Do you really have to corner me like this? Who are you to judge what kind of person I am? This time, instead of pulling away, I raised an eyebrow and stared straight into that face I once found charming, replying word by word, then who are you to judge me? Do you need to account for every penny you've borrowed from me before you shut up? Is it really that hard to admit you're a loser? His face cycled through shades of green and purple. He had always been the center of attention, surrounded by admirers, and over time, he'd almost forgotten he wasn't actually a rich heir. Watching his awkward expression, I sneered, Ryan, I admit I used to be a bit of a fool, but calling you fake is spot on. If I hadn't been foolish and you hadn't been fake, how would we ever have ended up tangled together? Right, my words struck a nerve, and his composure shattered. He turned and roared at the still whispering crowd, his voice so loud it nearly burst my eardrums. Claire says something, and you all just believe it. Are you all brainless? Get out, all of you. I need to talk to her alone. 8 or 9 men and women quickly stood up, grabbing their bags and jackets, ready to slip out. Only 1 or 2 brave ones cautiously tried to persuade Ryan. Bro Jew, sis-in-law is probably in a bad mood, don't take it to heart. Tonight was supposed to celebrate her success. Don't let things get too tense, or it'll be hard to smooth over later. Truth be told, they were also curious whether what I just said was true or not, but Ryan had always had a bad temper, and no one dared to stay and listen to the gossip. Their steps were painfully slow, clearly intending to leave, yet they inched toward the door with frequent glances back, afraid of missing some explosive drama. Ryan shot a fierce glare at the person who'd tried to persuade him and spat through gritted teeth, Get out. Just as the others were about to touch the door handle, I pushed past Ryan, stood up immediately, and said, No one needs to leave, you've known Ryan for so many years. Don't you already know exactly what kind of person he is? Before I could finish, Ryan yanked me back, his hand clamped over my mouth and nose as he warned in a low voice, Claire, shut up before I lose my temper. If you keep making a scene, see if I won't really break up with you. That line again. I'd heard it so many times over the past 4 years, Every time we argued, Ryan loved to scare me with the threat of a breakup because he thought I loved him too much to ever really leave. I looked up and glared at him fiercely. The faint woody scent of his cologne on his palm was still so familiar. That bottle of perfume I'd specially gifted him for his birthday months ago, but now, everything had soured. Just moments ago, that same hand had been draped over another girl's shoulder. In the past, I would never have done this. At the very least, I wouldn't have humiliated him in public. I always thought that as long as he was willing to stay with me, even if it meant enduring some grievances, I could tolerate it for a lifetime. But now, the same hand that has touched others before touching me just feels utterly repulsive. I can't pinpoint exactly when I stopped loving him. Maybe the disappointment had been piling up slowly over time, or maybe it was the moment he said that word earlier, and all affection in my heart suddenly died. The words I had intended to say were stuck in my throat, neither able to come out nor be swallowed down. Ryan, seeing that I had stopped resisting, assumed I had softened. His tone eased a little as he put on a condescending act of persuasion. "Claire, think before you speak. Stop making me angry. If we really break up, don't come crying to my doorstep begging to get back together." Finally able to catch my breath, I took a deep breath, looked up calmly, and said, "Fine, then let's break up." The group that had been about to walk out the door suddenly froze in place, turning back to look at me in unison, their expressions even more shocked than Ryan's. Someone spoke up. "Sis, you're really willing to break up with Brother Jew? Sis, don't be angry. Just lower your head and apologize to Brother Jew, and this'll blow over." They all clamored, urging me to back down. In their eyes, whoever loved more should be the first to admit fault and yield. Right or wrong didn't really matter. The girl who had been in Ryan's arms earlier smirked meaningfully and said in a mocking tone, "Miss Lu, are you really willing to break up with Ruojo? This must be the day the sun rises from the west." Who was it that ran to his doorstep threatening to slit her wrists and cried her heart out when Ruojo wanted to break up with you before? As soon as she said this, everyone naturally assumed I was just acting out of momentary anger and wouldn't actually go through with it. With an indifferent expression, I repeated very seriously, "I just want to break up with Ryan." Ryan was clearly stunned. He looked down at me, his eyes filled with disbelief. "Claire, stop messing around. What kind of joke is this?" I pushed away his arm that was blocking my chest, creating some distance before replying, "I'm not joking, but this time, I won't be begging at your doorstep anymore." Ryan opened his mouth but couldn't utter a word, the light in his eyes gradually dimming. One of his friends instinctively chimed in, "Sis, why, don't you like Brother Jew anymore?" I turned to smile at him and said softly, "I don't like him anymore." I added, "There's one more thing to clarify. The villa Ryan is living in now is actually mine." As soon as the words left my mouth, Ryan completely lost his composure. He rushed forward and slapped me hard across the face. "Claire, if you want to go crazy, don't go too far." My head buzzed violently, and a metallic taste quickly filled my mouth, impossible to suppress. A girl pointed at me and screamed, "Miss Lu, you're bleeding from the corner of your mouth." I froze for a moment, instinctively wiping my lips with my hand. My fingertips came away stained with bright red. Staring at the blood, I felt dazed, but in the end, I couldn't help but laugh. How bizarre. Ryan stood right in front of me, glaring down coldly. "Claire, are you sober now? I'll give you one more chance to explain yourself clearly." His eyes bore into me, unyielding, as if he wouldn't relent unless I clarified that the house wasn't mine. I swallowed the metallic taste of blood in my throat and, under everyone's gaze, pulled out my phone from my bag. Ryan stared at me, confused, and asked, "What are you doing with your phone? Talk to me." As he spoke, he lunged to snatch it. I quickly stepped back, putting distance between us. The call connected, and a man's voice answered. Steadying my breath and suppressing the pain, I calmly said, "Hello, I'd like to report a crime." Ryan's pupils constricted sharply, and he charged at me like a madman. "Claire, are you insane?" I dodged a few times, weaving around him as I relayed the address to the police. By the time the call ended, Ryan had already backed me into a corner, his towering figure blocking my escape. Everyone in the room stood by the doorway, watching the spectacle. Yet not a single soul dared to intervene. I put away my phone, straightened up, and flashed Ryan a grin. I knew it must have looked ghastly, blood still clinging between my teeth, but I didn't care, as long as it unsettled Ryan, that was enough. Ryan froze at the sight of my smile, as if nailed to the spot. "Claire, what are you smiling about?" he demanded, drawing a deep breath. I swallowed the blood and fury in my mouth, then spat a mouthful of bloody foam directly onto his face with a sharp paw. Ryan wiped his face furiously, eyes wide. "Claire, you dare spit on me?" The moment the words left his lips, I swung my hand and slapped him hard across the face. I swung my arm and gave Ryan another slap. 2 sharp cracks that landed cleanly on his face. Ryan turned red with anger, gritting his teeth as he said, "Claire, you really think you're faster than me?" I ignored him completely and struck again, hard enough to almost spark flames. "Say one more word, and I'll give you another slap." Ryan, who had just opened his mouth, immediately shut it. Finally learning his lesson, the private room fell eerily silent. A dozen people didn't dare make a sound, the tension so thick I could practically hear everyone's nervous heartbeats. I shoved Ryan, still unsteady from the beating, back onto the couch. He collapsed onto it, and I stepped over his legs, exhaling coldly as I muttered, "Stay away from me from now on." Ryan, clutching his reddened cheek, stared at me in disbelief before gritting out, "Claire, I never thought you were like this. You say I'm fake, but aren't you the real master of disguise?" He wasn't entirely wrong. Over the years, I had indeed put on an act for him, bending over backward to match his tastes, tolerating his flaws without limits, and reshaping myself into someone he'd like, even if it meant compromising again and again. Ryan curled his lips into a cold smirk. "Claire, you'll regret breaking up with me someday." I didn't even bother responding. Reaching straight for my bag on the couch, he flinched, raising his hands to shield his face, expecting another slap. But when nothing came, he lowered them awkwardly after a long pause. A crowd of onlookers had gathered at the private room's entrance. I glanced at them and said coolly, "Had enough of the show? Don't forget to accompany me to the police station later to give your statements." At my words, everyone quickly shrank back, afraid of getting involved, though tonight was supposedly a celebration banquet for me. Most of the attendees were actually Ryan's friends, just using my celebration as an excuse to gather and drink. Ryan, still holding his face, asked me coldly, "Claire, are you really planning to take this to the police? You've already hit me and vented your anger. I'm giving you a way out. Stop making a scene." A girl beside him chimed in softly, "Claire, if Brother Ruojo says so, please stop. If you don't care about him, I do." I tilted my head and gave her a sidelong glance, sneering. "You care, huh?" The girl nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. I strode forward, grabbed her arm, dragged her to the sofa, then stepped behind her and delivered a sharp kick to her backside. With a shriek, she flew like a bird and landed right on Ryan, knocking the wind out of him. Ryan snapped out of it and glared at me. "Claire, Sia didn't provoke you. Why did you push her?" As I raised my hand for another strike, Ryan quickly shut up and shielded Sia in his arms. Just then, a heavy knock sounded at the door, and the police entered. Without hesitation, I shoved through the crowd, stumbled to the entrance, and shouted through blooded lips, "Help me, help me." One hand instinctively covered the wound at the corner of my mouth. What happened next unfolded quickly. Ryan was taken away by the police for questioning. That slap of his split the corner of my mouth and left a swollen bruise on the side of my face. My fair skin made the marks even more noticeable. He still had the audacity to play the victim in front of the officers, pointing at his own reddened face and saying, "Claire hit me too. Why aren't you doing anything about her?" The officer glanced up and said flatly, "Claire's actions were self-defense." Ryan opened his mouth but ultimately didn't dare argue. Since my injuries weren't severe, the police just gave Ryan a verbal warning and had him pay me 10,000 yuan in compensation to settle the matter. After accepting the compensation, I got ready to drive home. Just as I opened the car door and sat down, Ryan casually opened the passenger side and tried to get in without a second thought, even pretending to care as he said, "You should go to the hospital first. That injury on your face needs treatment." Gripping the steering wheel, I turned to look at him like he was an alien. "Ryan, we've already broken up. Are you seriously this shameless?" Get out, you've got 1 minute. He still refused to give up, turning to glare at me with a frown. Claire, what do you even want? Today was supposed to be your celebration dinner. I let you hit me, paid you 10,000 yuan. What more do you want? I ignored him, simply grabbed the car keys, got out, and walked straight back toward the police station without looking back. Ryan finally realized I was serious and quickly got out of the car to chase after me, grabbing my wrist as his tone softened at last. Claire, stop making a scene. Okay, I'll apologize. Just get in the car, it's late, let's go home first. I shook off his hand and shoved him away hard. While he was still stunned, I had already slipped back into the driver's seat, stepped on the gas, and sped off, leaving only one sentence behind. Since we've broken up, remember to move your things out yourself. Ryan never came to collect his belongings. He assumed, like all the times before, that I was just throwing a tantrum and would eventually crawl back to him once I cooled off. For the past 4 years, every fight had followed the same script. He'd disappear for a few days, wait for me to grovel with an apology, then stand there watching me dissolve into tears before casually declaring, I forgive you. He relished that sense of superiority in our relationship, feeding his ego by humiliating and controlling me. But this time, I let him down completely. I never reached out again. Instead, I quietly called a moving company and, late one night, packed up every last trace of Ryan and tossed it all out. I saw him again half a month later, in a noisy bar. Ryan was surrounded by friends, drinking and having a great time, with Emily in his arms. I hadn't interacted much with Emily, only knowing she was Ryan's newly acquainted little sister. Under the colorful lights, Ryan spotted me immediately. Swirling his glass, he pulled Emily even closer, clearly trying to provoke me. Claire, who told you I was here? His eyes were full of mockery and amusement. Emily also glanced over, smiling ambiguously. Brother Ruojo, you were right. She really came. She won't threaten to kill herself again, will she? How scary. I couldn't be bothered with them and just led my client toward the private room upstairs. Ryan, feeling humiliated, pushed Emily aside and quickly caught up to me, suddenly grabbing my arm so hard it made me frown. Ryan, let go of me. Seeing this, my client immediately stepped in, prying his hand away with polite yet authoritative tone. Sir, please release Miss Liu. Hearing the client's deep voice, Ryan finally noticed the man beside me. He leaned close to my ear, his voice cold. Claire, you're something else. Sneaking around with men behind my back. I knew you wouldn't stay quiet for long. I looked up and gave him a cold glance, struggling to free my arm. Ryan, what's wrong with you? Let go. I have an important project to discuss tonight. Unlike me, he never understood boundaries. Ryan never took work seriously. His daily priority was partying with his so-called friends, while I devoted almost all my time to my career. Now, I've risen to the position of general manager at a foreign investment bank, earning millions a year. Yet, in front of Ryan and his friends, he'd casually dismiss my efforts with a single remark. Claire's job was all arranged by me. So what if she's a general manager? Earning millions a year still means she's just working for someone else. For the sake of his pride, I never exposed him in public. Over time, he even convinced himself that my achievements were entirely his doing. I was about to slap him again, but my client acted faster, shoving Ryan aside and shielding me firmly behind him. Ryan, already unsteady from drinking, stumbled back and crashed into the bar counter with a loud clatter, sending bottles and glasses rolling across the floor. The noisy bar fell silent instantly. Even the music paused. The impact sobered Ryan up a little, but only made him angrier. Claire, you're seeing other men, and now you dare let him lay hands on me, he hissed through gritted teeth, seeing no threat to my client. I gently tugged his sleeve, signaling him to stand down, then walked toward the bar. Ignoring Ryan, I addressed the bartender directly. I'll cover the damages from the broken items. As I spoke, Ryan also pulled out his card and handed it over. The bartender took both and began calculating the losses. Leaning against the bar, I suddenly remembered something and asked the server who was buried in calculations, Ryan, how much did he order tonight? I recalled glancing at his table when I first walked in. Dozens of high-end imported liquor bottles. The server checked the computer and replied, Mr. Chen ordered 18 bottles, totaling 130,000. As a member, you get a 15% discount. Ryan, hearing this, seemed to regain his confidence, tilting his chin up and looking at me pretentiously. Claire, I'm in a bad mood tonight, so I asked the guys to drink with me. After you finish discussing the project, drive me home. He probably thought I was calculating how much he'd spent tonight. As if I was softening and about to give in again, the server then handed me the POS machine and asked, Miss Lu, would you like to settle the bill together? Mr. Chen still has some outstanding tabs from previous visits. Ryan's eyes were full of expectation, waiting for me to cover his bill as usual, but I shook my head lightly and said, no need. From now on, Ryan's expenses should no longer be charged under my name. He can settle his own debts. After paying for the broken glasses and bottles, I took back my card and gestured for the client to head upstairs to the private room. Unexpectedly, Ryan chased after me, grabbing my shoulder with suppressed anger in his voice. Claire, what do you mean? Are we going to settle everything from now on? I turned sideways, raised my arm, and without hesitation, slapped him again. Ryan staggered from the blow and fell to the ground. The entire bar fell silent. All eyes fixed on us. I glanced at the stunned Emily in the booth and crooked my finger at her. Hurry up and help your Ruojo gidge up. Just a few drinks and he's already like this. Men who love alcohol are never reliable. Emily froze for a moment but eventually came over to help Ryan to his feet. After saying this, I disdainfully brushed my hands together, composed myself, and then flashed a polite smile at the client by the staircase. Mr. Fu, I apologize for the scene tonight. Everything's settled now. Shall we head to the private room to discuss business? Ethan curled his lips slightly, his eyes glinting with amusement. By the time we finished discussing the collaboration, it was already past 11 p.m. as Ethan and I stepped out of the private room, and before we could descend the stairs, we heard a commotion from the bar below. I leaned over discreetly to look and saw Ryan arguing heatedly with the bar staff. The music drowned out their words, making it hard to hear clearly, so I craned my neck for a better view. Suddenly, Ethan's voice, low and gentle, sounded behind me. Ms. Lu, I admire your sharp investment instincts, but honestly, your taste in men leaves much to be desired. I turned to glance at him and smiled faintly. Thanks for the reminder. Vice President, I'm well aware. Ethan pulled me back onto the steps. This isn't the time for you to go down there, whether it's a man or a woman. Anyone greedy for money is equally troublesome. I nodded without arguing. Ethan was right. At this moment, Ryan is arguing with the bar staff, most likely because he can't afford tonight's bill. The wealthy persona he's carefully crafted in front of his friends is about to crumble. If I go down now, he'll just stop me and ask me to foot the bill. As I ponder this, the commotion downstairs suddenly becomes clearer, and I hear Ryan's voice. My girlfriend is still upstairs. She'll come down soon to pay for me. We just had a fight. We didn't break up. Isn't her money meant to be spent on me? If I just beckon, she'll come running like a puppy. Hearing this, my grip on the handrail tightens. Ryan's words cut like a knife, mercilessly stabbing into my heart. 4 years of relationship. This is how it ends. The outcome was predestined all along. The bar staff replies coldly, Miss Lu has already settled her own bill. The remaining charges are all from Mr. Chen's recent visits, totaling 580,000. Though I can't see Ryan's expression, I can imagine his face turning ashen. His usual freeloading buddies are all playing dumb now, and even Emily, who's always been his staunch defender, stays silent. After a long pause, Emily finally mutters, Brother Ruojo, didn't you say Claire owes everything she has today to you? If she won't even help you pay, you'll have to handle this 580,000 yourself. It's just pocket change for you. Anyway, I nearly laugh out loud. 580,000 is indeed nothing to me. But for Ryan, it's anything but an easy sum to cough up. The next second, the shattering sound of a liquor bottle hitting the ground echoed, followed by Ryan's furious roar demanding I come downstairs. Get Claire down here. I want to ask her face to face if she's dead set on cutting me off completely. Just then, I heard the click of high heels approaching the staircase. I was about to ask Ethan to step aside, but he grabbed my wrist and whispered, "The bar has a back door." Ethan pulled me straight up the steps and led me out through the rear exit. I called him a designated driver and waited until he was safely in the car before turning to leave. Ethan rolled down the window and looked up at me earnestly. "Claire, you should avoid men like him in the future. You're already outstanding and absolutely deserve someone better. Don't waste your youth and emotions on him." I nodded, but an involuntary pang of bitterness welled up inside. During my 4 years with Ryan, he never once complimented me, even making me doubt whether I was good enough or worthy of love. But tonight, for the first time, I heard a man affirm me so openly. And this affirmation had nothing to do with romance, it was just an objective, sincere acknowledgement. Perhaps that's why it moved me. Such simple recognition was exactly what I needed most right now. As for how Ryan ended up that night, I had no interest in finding out. There were only 2 possibilities. Either he'd ask his parents for money to cover his debts, or he'd scrape together funds from his so-called friends. But I knew deep down that those drinking buddies were unlikely to actually bail him out. A few nights later, in the dead of night, I had just finished showering and was lazily lying on the couch with a face mask on. The house was so quiet that I could only hear my own breathing. Suddenly, the sound of repeated failed attempts at the door lock's keypad echoed from the entrance. Beep, beep. My intuition told me it was Ryan. He hadn't been back in half a month, so of course, he didn't know I had already changed the passcode. The person outside kept trying to input the password, the lock repeatedly signaling errors. Until finally, he kicked the door in frustration and cursed, "Damn it, Claire, you actually dared to do this." Then came the violent pounding on the door. "Claire, open the damn door. I never agreed to the breakup, so it doesn't count. I'm giving you one last chance." I didn't respond. Instead, I silently turned off all the lights in the house and hid in the darkness, pretending no one was home. Confronting an emotionally unstable man in the middle of the night, I wasn't that stupid. Ryan's fists hammered against the door, the dull thuds like a hammer striking my chest. I picked up my phone, about to call the police, when suddenly, Ethan called. I hesitated but answered. "Vice President." "What's up?" Ethan chuckled, his voice carrying a hint of laziness. "I called specifically to thank you. President Liu, the project we invested in last time is progressing smoothly. It's truly an honor to collaborate with someone like you." I wasn't in the mood for small talk and replied flatly, "Honor aside, someone's banging on my door right now. If there's nothing else, I'll hang up. I need to call the police." Ethan seemed stunned, taking a moment to process. "Someone's banging on your door, and you're this calm." I glanced at the reinforced door, now rattling violently, and said nonchalantly, "The door's sturdy. It won't break anytime soon." After a few seconds of silence, Ethan murmured, "Wait for me. I'm coming over right now." I hung up and checked the peephole to assess the situation outside. Outside the door, Ryan's face was contorted, his eyes bloodshot. "Claire, I know you're home. You already humiliated me in front of my friends last time. Isn't that enough?" "I admit, I like pretending to be rich around my friends, but you've known that all along. What's the big deal? Why can't you just forgive me?" He kicked the door viciously again. "Claire, do you really have the heart to never see me again? If not for the door between us, I'd swear his fist would be in my face the next second." I picked up my phone and pressed the intercom button, responding calmly, "Ryan, I don't care if you pretend to be rich, but why must you step on me to do it? I used to like you, so I tolerated it again and again. Now that I don't, why should I keep indulging you?" Hearing my voice, Ryan's expression froze. The facade of pride and dignity he'd maintained for years was torn apart by my words in an instant. Pressing against the door's camera, he couldn't see my face no matter how hard he tried. All he could do was whisper into the microphone, "Claire, just forgive me this once. I've been reflecting on what happened at the bar for a long time. I shouldn't have said those things to you. I really know I was wrong." Though his words sounded repentant, his eyes betrayed unmistakable anger and resentment. After a long silence, I finally spoke softly, "Didn't you say you knew you were wrong?" Ryan parted his lips, but no words came out. Staring at the screen, I delivered the final blow with calm precision. "You're just trapped by your own poverty." Suddenly, It fell silent outside the door. Ryan lowered his head and said nothing. Leaning against the door, I slid weakly to the floor. I had liked Ryan for 6 years, pursued him for 2, and been in a relationship for 4. After all these years, I had poured out almost all my sincerity, only to be met with his icy words. Not worth it. How laughable and ironic. Outside the door came his low sigh and the sound of a gentle knock. Claire, it's only in these past few days that I've realized how important you are to me. Is it too late to say this now? In truth, he wasn't regretting losing me. It was just that these days, with people chasing him for debts and him hiding everywhere, no one was willing to unconditionally clean up his messes anymore. Only when he truly hit rock bottom did he remember my kindness. At this thought, I let out a bitter laugh and ignored him, leaving both inside and outside the room in silence. I don't know how much time passed when suddenly, a pained groan came from outside the door, followed by Ethan's voice. You're already broken up, yet you still won't let go, clinging to a woman. What a disgrace to men. Get lost. I quickly steadied myself against the wall and stood up, checking the door camera to see Ethan furiously punching Ryan. I quickly opened the door just in time to see Ethan's fist still suspended mid-air. Vice President, stop hitting him. Ethan's hand paused for a moment, but he still tightly gripped Ryan's collar, his brow furrowed. Claire, you're being soft-hearted again. Someone like him isn't worth it. Ryan turned his head to look at me, his eyes instantly flashing with the wild joy of someone who had narrowly escaped death, as if grasping the last lifeline in despair. His lips, stained with blood, curled into a grin. Claire, I knew you still cared about me deep down. I shook my head and said calmly, it's not that I pity you, I just don't want the vice president to hurt his hand. As I spoke, I raised the badminton racket in my hand and slowly walked toward them. With each step, the racket tapped against my palm like a death knell. Efficient and convenient. Ryan, who had just been clinging to hope, now had a sudden shift in his expression, panicked. He struggled desperately to break free from Ethan's grip. Claire, if you dare lay a hand on me, I swear I'll make you pay. His threat had long lost its effect on me. I chuckled softly, crouched down in front of him, and pressed the racket against his forehead. How exactly will you make me pay, Ryan? All these years, I've never felt I owed you anything. After the breakup, I didn't even demand compensation for what I lost, and yet, here you are, coming after me first. He tried to turn his head away, but Ethan grabbed his chin firmly. Ethan's voice was chillingly cold. Behave. Ryan glared at me fiercely, resentful yet powerless. It was the first time in 6 years I'd seen him so disheveled and helpless. Ryan was pinned to the ground by Ethan, still spouting threats between occasional struggles, but he was no match for Ethan. Their physiques alone were worlds apart. Watching him like this, I couldn't help but smirk as I swung the racket and struck his thigh hard. Ryan let out a pained scream that echoed through the night in the courtyard, and soon, lights flickered on in the previously darkened villa area. I didn't stop there. Another swing landed on his shoulder, and his howls lit up a few more neighboring houses. Only when he begged pitifully, clutching at my skirt for mercy, did I finally stop and toss the racket aside. Ethan finally released Ryan and stepped to my side, gently taking my hand to inspect it before shaking his head with a smile. You went so hard. Your palm's all red. I curled my lips and pulled my hand back. Ryan was now curled up on the ground, drenched in sweat, reduced to gasps and groans from the pain. I crouched down, wiping the sweat from his forehead, feeling an unprecedented calm. Ryan, I really don't like you anymore. Go chase after whichever girl you fancy. I don't care anymore. Just don't show your face around me again. Lowering my voice, I leaned closer to his ear and added, otherwise, next time, I won't stop at just hitting you twice. Ryan struggled to push himself up, his eyes fixed on me. Claire, you'll regret this. Since we're breaking up, at least let me take my things. I crossed my arms and replied coldly, your junk. You'll have to dig through the dump for it. I tilted my chin toward the yard. Your stuff hasn't been in my house for a while. He sat on the ground, frowning. When did you throw it out? I smirked. 2 weeks ago. Ryan seemed to suddenly understand and let out a bitter laugh. So you'd already made up your mind to break up. Claire, 4 years together, and you just walk away like it's nothing. I dropped my smile and said firmly, You were the one who gave up first. Don't play the heartbroken act with me. I'm sick of it. Save it for someone else. I couldn't be bothered to look at him anymore and pulled Ethan inside. Ryan's final words were shut out by the door, and I had no interest in hearing them, let alone caring. Once inside, after a long silence, I finally turned my attention to Ethan. How did you get here so fast? I live in the east of the city, and you're in the west. Even by plane, you wouldn't make it in time. Ethan adjusted his suit collar lazily, grinning. Couldn't sleep. So I drove around your neighborhood. Your flowers are prettier than mine. I shot him a glance but didn't call him out. Why bother pointing out such an obvious excuse? Ryan just vanished from my life like that, and all those friends who used to chase after him scattered too. What I didn't expect was that Emily would actually come looking for me. One day after work, she stopped me. Can you get in touch with Ruojo? I looked at her like she was an idiot. He's your brother. Why are you asking me? I broke up with Ryan ages ago. Emily had red-rimmed eyes, on the verge of tears. Ruojo said he urgently needed money for cash flow a while ago and borrowed $1 million from me. Now it's been almost a month with no contact. Emily always thought Ryan was a rich second-generation heir and wanted to use that $1 million to land a wealthy husband. Turns out she bet on the wrong horse. I couldn't help it. I burst out laughing. Didn't I warn you all before? Ryan is just a con artist who pretends to be loaded. His specialty is acting rich in front of others. If you didn't use your head, who else can you blame? Emily started crying, tears rolling down one by one, looking utterly pitiful. How was I supposed to know you were telling the truth? I shrugged, stepped around her, and tossed over my shoulder without looking back. Instead of wasting time chasing me, you'd be better off reporting him to the police for fraud. Emily didn't follow me. She just stood there, frozen, her eyes blank and lost. Actually, no one can really help her with this kind of thing. Spending money to learn a lesson is something she must go through, just like I once did. Only when she truly wakes up will she realize how foolish she was back then. Next, I'll tell you the second story. My husband pretended our family had gone bankrupt to divorce me, saying he didn't want to hold me and our daughter back. But at night, I overheard him calling another woman, saying, "Sweetheart, I tricked that stupid woman into thinking I'm bankrupt so I can divorce her soon. Once I ditch her and our daughter, I'll marry you and give you and Xiao Hao a proper life." I laughed. Little did he know his company had actually gone bankrupt, with debts in the hundreds of millions. Since he wanted a divorce and to shoulder the debt alone, my daughter and I would gladly oblige. Holding the freshly signed bankruptcy papers, I couldn't pretend it didn't hurt, sitting on the steps. I took a deep breath. Should I tell him? The company was left to him by his parents to secure his future. Back then, he even begged me to use my dowry to keep the company afloat, which I did. So it carried my efforts too. He had no business sense. I handled everything while he never set foot in the office. Assuming all was well, now, with the sudden bankruptcy, he'd never accept it. After much thought, I gritted my teeth and pulled out my phone. Fine, worst case. We'd work together to repay the loans. No matter what, we're still family. I took out my phone and was just about to call my husband when he beat me to it and sent a message. "Lily, come home quickly. I have something to discuss with you." Could it be that my husband already knows about the family company's bankruptcy? Fearing he might do something rash, I hurriedly took a taxi home. As soon as the door opened, Frank walked up to me, hesitating for a moment before finally handing me his phone. On the screen was the news about the company's bankruptcy and debts. My mind was in chaos. I hadn't expected Frank to already know about this. "Honey, I wanted to comfort him and tell him not to be upset, but he sighed and beat me to it, pulling out a divorce agreement from a nearby drawer. "Xiao Yu, the company is bankrupt now, and we owe $100 million. I can't drag you and our daughter down with me. With such a huge debt, I'll probably never be able to repay it in this lifetime. You and our daughter would only suffer if you stayed with me. It's better to divorce early and set you both free." I could hardly believe it. My hands trembled as I took the divorce agreement he handed me. Honey, there's still hope. If we work together as a couple, we can definitely pay off this debt. I can't let you bear the responsibility alone." I shook my head, deeply moved. Despite the enormity of the company's bankruptcy and debt, he was willing to shoulder it alone. As his wife who had weathered storms with him, I naturally couldn't let him face it by himself. The divorce agreement he handed me was torn to pieces by my own hands. I looked at him with unwavering determination and said firmly, word by word, "Honey, we're a team. I can't let you bear this alone." Frank glanced at the shreds on the floor, a flicker of impatience flashing in his eyes before he sighed and looked up again. "Why are you being so stubborn?" He truly loved me. Ever since learning about the bankruptcy, all he could think about was divorcing me, starting with concern for my well-being and ending with impatience. "Vivian, why are you so clingy?" I said. "The company went bankrupt and we're left with a huge debt. Why do you insist on staying with me?" I felt a bit wronged. But more than that, I was moved. After all, he genuinely cared about me and didn't want to hold me back. But how could I do something so unethical? I refused him again and again, even going so far as to seek help from his best friend, Jack, to persuade him together. Jack was my husband's college classmate, and the two of them were incredibly close. He even played the role of a strategist when my husband was pursuing me, offering advice just to help his best friend get what he wanted. I believed their bond was so strong that Jack's words would surely get through to him. And Jack did try, telling my husband not to act impulsively and that divorce was no trivial matter. But for some reason, just a day later, Jack ended up persuading me instead. "Lily, actually, what Afe said isn't wrong. You should just get a divorce to avoid holding you and the child back." Frank also nodded beside me. "Lily, did you hear that? Getting a divorce now is the best for you." I looked at Jack in disbelief. Back when I was with Frank, he was so supportive, and when he found out Frank wanted to divorce me, he was against it too. Why is he suddenly pushing for us to divorce now? Jack just lowered his head, avoiding my gaze, telling me to think about it again. At night, I was startled awake by the sound of a door closing, only to find that Frank, who had been lying beside me, was gone. A man's voice came from the balcony in the living room. Who was he talking to in the middle of the night? I slipped on my slippers and walked to the door, listening carefully to the sounds from the balcony. On the other end of the phone was a sweet, coquettish female voice. In the silence of the night, their voices clearly reached my ears. "Baby, soon, don't worry. I lied to that foolish woman, saying the family business went bankrupt. Once she takes that burden with her, our family can be together. I'll marry you soon, and then you and Xiao Hao will have your rightful place. I can't stand her manly personality anymore. How could she ever compare to you?" A woman's coy voice came through the phone. "Frank, you're awful. Though it's July, my heart feels icy cold." So Frank's talk about the company going bankrupt and being in debt was just an excuse to drive me away and bring home the woman he cheated with. My heart sank, and cold sweat broke out. My husband of 7 years, to bring his mistress home, would even fabricate a story about the company's bankruptcy to force me into divorce, all while painting himself as the devoted husband unwilling to let his wife and daughter suffer. Frank's side account recently wanted to buy the latest iPhone. And I also had my eye on a fur coat. "Buy it for me, darling. You can have whatever you want. Once we divorce, make that woman leave the entire company to me. You'll have everything you desire." Frank waved his hand dismissively, tapped his phone twice, and just like that, 50,000 yuan was sent. 50,000 yuan isn't a small amount. Even though I manage the company, my monthly salary is only 10,000. Back then, Frank's parents begged me to use my dowry to keep the company afloat, which led to its later success. But afterward, his family never mentioned repaying the money, and I never asked, thinking we were all family, for that 50,000 yuan. How many drinks did I endure? How many forced smiles did I plaster on? But now, without a second thought, he sent it to someone else. Seeing how casually he spent it, he must have been transferring money like this often. Anger flared up inside me. I work myself to the bone for this company every day, dragging it back from the brink, while he lounges at home, spending money freely, even keeping a mistress and a love child outside, living the high life. All he cares about is whether he can get his hands on more money. The company means nothing to him. If that's how it is, then I'll gladly make his dream come true. Frank once again brought up the divorce by presenting me with the divorce agreement, and I didn't refuse. I simply signed my name on the divorce papers. This time, Frank seemed a bit puzzled. Why are you willing to sign now? I lowered my head and pinched myself hard to force out tears, then looked up at him with teary eyes. Honey, I know you're doing all this for me and our daughter. I thought about it a lot last night. We can't let your efforts go to waste. Hearing my explanation, Frank almost couldn't contain his triumphant smile, merely nodding and saying, I'm glad you understand. Honey, what about the company's debts? I lightly bit my lip. Looking at him with feigned concern, he waved his hand dismissively. I'll take care of the debts, after all. I'm a man. How could I let you leave the marriage burdened with debt? Just focus on raising our daughter. I sneered inwardly but kept my expression neutral, gazing at him with apparent gratitude. Honey, you're so kind, but you know I invested all my dowry into the company, and now I have no money. Where will our daughter and I live after the divorce? Will you leave the house to us? As if afraid I might back out, Frank replied urgently, how could I let you and our daughter be homeless? Don't worry, the house is yours. After a moment of thought, he pulled out 2 contracts from a drawer, one for the company transfer and another for the house deed, both in my name. Sweetheart, sign these first. I hadn't expected him to have everything prepared so thoroughly. Clearly, he'd been planning this divorce for a while. Pretending reluctance, I shakily signed both contracts, though inside I was screaming with joy. After the divorce, my precious daughter stayed with me. That bankrupt and debt-ridden company has nothing to do with me, and I even got a villa out of it. Who wouldn't be happy? Honey, don't worry, I won't let the bankrupt company or the debts drag you and our daughter down. Frank held my hand, his words a mix of truth and lies that made me sick to my stomach. I slowly pulled my hand away. If I hadn't overheard his phone call yesterday, I might have fallen for his act. On the phone, he was so affectionate with that other woman. Even calling our daughter a money pit. I bet he's still dreaming about taking control of the company after the divorce and living happily with his mistress. I wonder if he'd still be smiling like this if he knew the company was truly bankrupt. As much as I'm relieved to be divorced from that scumbag Frank, I have to consider our daughter's feelings. She's only 6 years old, at an age where she's deeply dependent on her parents. I can't ignore her emotions. So I suggested one final farewell as a family of 3. Frank agreed, of course. Now that the divorce is finalized and he's gotten what he wanted, he had no reason to refuse such a small request. I didn't tell our daughter about the divorce, and Frank kept quiet about it too. She was overjoyed when she heard both her mom and dad would take her out to play, dragging us to the amusement park she'd always wanted to visit. Honestly, I feel guilty about this. After she was born, I was rarely home. Always busy with the company, and barely spent any time with her. Frank never liked taking care of kids either, so our daughter was raised by her grandparents initially. It wasn't until they left that she came back to live with us. I still remember when her kindergarten teacher once called me in for a talk. The teacher sighed, her tone helpless. Xiaofu's mom, I know you and her dad are busy, but you need to pay attention to her emotional well-being. She showed me a drawing, a man, a woman, and a little girl at an amusement park, but for some reason, the picture was crossed out with black lines, and a big, tearful face was scribbled over it in black. That was Xiaofu's drawing. Although I don't know how things are in your family, I still hope you can spend more time with your child. During that period, I was busy working outside, while Frank was probably busy accompanying his mistress and her child. I've failed my daughter in so many ways. If it weren't for the divorce with Frank, he probably wouldn't have been willing to spend any time on our daughter either. When she learned we were taking her to the amusement park, my daughter cautiously held my hand and asked, "Are Mom and Dad going with me together?" I nodded and glanced at Frank beside me. There wasn't a trace of joy on his face, only relief at the thought of soon being rid of us. Perhaps he wanted to maintain the image of a good father in our daughter's eyes, or maybe he felt guilty toward us, his wife and child. Frank took the initiative to cover all our expenses, though of course, it was with money he'd borrowed in advance. I didn't hesitate to spend it, since even if I didn't, the money would just go to the daughter and child he was raising outside. But perhaps he genuinely dislikes our daughter. He showed us no warmth, just kept staring at his phone, texting and grinning at the screen. He insisted I come with her and the kid to the amusement park. Just bear with it a little longer, next time. I'll bring my alt and we'll have a proper time. Ah, I can't wait to take you and Xiao Hao home already, he said over the phone, occasionally glancing up at me. During the 2 days at the amusement park, Frank never once smiled in front of me or our daughter. In fact, when it was time to leave, he looked happier than anyone. Though she's young, I know my daughter is clever. She probably sensed something was off about her father, but she didn't ask any questions. Back home, the bank's debt collection call reached Frank's phone while he was packing his things to leave. When he answered the call and heard the bank's voice, he was momentarily stunned. My heart sank. Oh no, when I first learned about the debt, I had deliberately gone to the bank and filled out the forms under Frank's name. I never expected the bank would call him directly. If he found out the company had truly gone bankrupt, he would definitely refuse to divorce me. Panic set in, my hands grew clammy with sweat, and my palms ached from how tightly I was clenching them. Hello, is this Mr. Frank? Would you like the bank to provide a repayment plan regarding your company's bankruptcy and the debt of 100 million? Frank was baffled. Unable to comprehend why the bank knew about the random claim he had made about the company going bankrupt and owing 100 million. Hearing no response, the bank staff continued, "Your wife came to us last time and asked for our help." Frank's expression shifted to sudden understanding. "No need. I'll repay the 100 million myself. I've already divorced my wife. I'm now the sole person responsible for the company, and I'll take on all the debts and liabilities alone." The staff member was shocked. "Mr. Frank, do you realize 100 million is no small sum? Repaying it alone would be extremely difficult. Wouldn't you like to discuss this with your wife again?" Frank grew impatient. After all, she had gone to great lengths to deceive me into divorcing her. She wouldn't change her mind now just because of someone else's words. "No need. I said I won't remarry her." As he finished packing and prepared to leave, I stopped him, mustering all my acting skills. "Frank, are you really sure about the divorce? I can help you pay off the debts together. As long as our family stays united, no difficulty is insurmountable." Frank wiped away my tears and said gently, "No need, Lily. My mind is made up. I can't hold you and the child back. Take care." With that, he dragged his suitcase away without looking back. I chased after him in tears until his car disappeared from my sight. Little did she know, my tears weren't shed because she was leaving, but to mourn the years of my youth I had wasted on a scumbag. When my daughter came back, I didn't hide the truth from her and told her about Frank leaving. I thought she would be upset, but instead, she hugged me tightly and said, "Mom, don't be sad. Dad is a bad dad." After hesitating for a while, my daughter finally revealed everything she knew. It turned out that during her school's sports day, Frank had frowned and refused her request. "Xiao Fu, Dad has something to do that day. Just tell the teacher you can't participate. Be good and don't be stubborn." Though disappointed, my daughter didn't throw a tantrum, but later, she witnessed her own father attending the parent-child sports day of a boy named Chen Xiaohao from the next class. That Chen Xiaohao did something she never dared to dream of, acting spoiled in front of her dad, asking for a game console, and her usually cold father smiled warmly at Michael. Hearing this, I was furious. It turned out that Frank had secretly been cozying up to that mistress and their illegitimate child while I was busy, even causing such deep emotional harm to our daughter. I held her in my arms, apologizing to her over and over. After divorcing me, Frank couldn't wait to marry that mother and son into his home. But Linda wasn't satisfied because she wanted Frank to propose to her openly and hold a grand wedding, one that had to be more extravagant than the one with his ex-wife. She had to outdo her in every way. Not only did that woman give birth to a son she couldn't have, but she also won her husband's love, and now the company would belong to her son in the future. She was truly the winner in life. But for some reason, Frank didn't feel as happy after getting the marriage certificate. Especially when Linda repeatedly brought up wanting a wedding of the century, his mind kept drifting back to the scene of his wedding with his ex-wife. Back then, the family business was struggling, operating at a loss. His parents couldn't even provide basic living expenses, and he couldn't afford a ring, but his ex-wife didn't mind. She even accepted a ring made from a soda can tab. At the time, she smiled and said, "It's okay, I believe in you. I believe I'll have the most precious ring in the world," but it seemed he hadn't kept that promise. "Honey, when are we going to have our own wedding? After all, we're already married." "I don't want people gossiping." Linda's voice snapped Frank out of his thoughts. He looked at Linda as she repeated the same words for the 7th time, and a sudden wave of irritation washed over him. "The company hasn't paid out yet, and I just borrowed money to buy you a house. Where would we get the funds for a wedding?" Linda grew angry, blaming him. "If you hadn't left the house to that mother and daughter, we wouldn't need to buy one now." Frank avoided the question. When she saw her college crush return from abroad, her heart began to flutter again, even to the point of being sentenced to Vivian. But after that one time, Linda became pregnant. Upon learning it was a boy, he was so overjoyed he couldn't sleep all night. He had longed for a son so badly. After all, only a son could carry on the family line. Gradually, his disgust grew stronger and stronger. She wasn't weak like a girl, nor did she know how to act coy like one. Yet in Linda, he found the dignity of being a man. So, amid Linda's coquetry and the hope of his son Li Chen's future, he came up with an idea. He would tell Vivian that the company had gone bankrupt and that he was putting on an act to trick her into willingly divorcing him. That way, he could secure the company's shares. As for the house, he'd leave it to that pitiful woman. But as he checked his bank balance, he felt something was off. Why hadn't this month's money been deposited yet? "I knew that one day Frank would find out his company had truly gone bankrupt, and given that scumbag's nature, he'd probably come back to harass me. So I contacted a buyer in advance and sold the house at a low price. Coincidentally, the selling price was exactly the $1.2 million dowry I had brought with me originally. Without delay, I changed my phone number and even took my daughter to the police station to change her name. After all this was done, I breathed a sigh of relief and bought a new house in the neighboring city. From then on, our lives finally settled into peace." Meanwhile, Frank waited and waited, but instead of receiving his company's payment, he got a debt collection call. "Frank, regarding the $100 million you borrowed, when can you repay it?" Frank thought it was a scam call. After all, he had never borrowed $100 million. After making 3 or 4 calls, Frank couldn't hold back and angrily shouted into the phone, "You damn scammer, stop calling me. When the hell did I owe $100 million? The consequence of this was that while he was lying at home taking an afternoon nap, someone knocked on his door. It wasn't until the bank staff stood before him that he realized something was wrong. Shaking his head, he said, "Aren't you Vivian's friends? Hey, this is all a misunderstanding. I don't have any debts." Before he could finish speaking, the bankruptcy notice and loan contract were shoved in his face, as if someone had grabbed him by the throat, swallowing the rest of his words. "Given your inability to repay, we will repossess the house as collateral." Watching the furniture being carried out, Frank was stunned. So the company really had gone bankrupt. Hearing the commotion from the bedroom, Linda came out and saw strangers hauling away her beloved TV. Instantly furious, she yelled, "What are you doing? How dare you take my things? Are you insane? Get out, I swear I'll sue you for trespassing." When she learned that Frank's company had gone bankrupt, that he had indeed signed for $100 million, and that their house was being repossessed, Linda was dumbfounded. With her hair disheveled, she rushed at Frank, screaming, "Didn't you say it was fake, just to trick your ex-wife? How is the company actually bankrupt? I must be the unluckiest person in the world to have believed you and stayed with you." Frank fell silent. After all, he had no idea why the company had really gone under. Suddenly, he thought of me and pulled out his phone to call, only to find the number disconnected. He went to our old house, only to discover new tenants living there. It was then he realized, I had known about the bankruptcy all along. Frank felt a surge of inexplicable rage. How could that woman do this? The company was truly bankrupt, yet she agreed to the divorce and left him with the debt. Wasn't this just pushing him into the fire? When I saw Frank again, it was on TV. After a month apart, he looked 10 years older in an instant, compared to his once high-spirited self. But then again, with debt collectors hounding him every day, how could he not age? On the screen, Frank was actually searching for me, accusing me in front of the entire nation of divorcing him because the company went bankrupt. even claiming the company still owed 100 million in debt. He said he had to work 10 jobs a day, his body broken from exhaustion, painting himself as pitiable. He even twisted the truth, calling me a woman who abandoned him out of fear of debt. The show quickly went viral, and the name YU was spat on by everyone, branding me as a gold-digging woman who only sticks around for the good times. The public's hatred toward me grew louder, though, honestly, this kind of behavior is truly despicable. The man supported you for so many years, and the moment the company went under, you divorced him. TSK, this woman is just materialistic, can't handle hardship. Shouldn't people like her be jailed? She's an embarrassment to women. But I guess this isn't technically illegal. Honestly, even the death penalty feels too light. A gold digger like her deserves to be torn to pieces. I can't even imagine the pressure this man endured. Company bankrupt, wife gone, losing everything overnight. The internet moves fast, and my personal information was quickly exposed. Even my name change became public knowledge, drawing even more hate. After my details were leaked, Frank showed up at my house, banging on the door, shouting, "Why you? Get the hell out here. Do you have any idea what you've done to me?" When I opened the door and demanded to know what he wanted, Frank just laughed. "What do I want? The company went bankrupt with a debt of 100 million. And you, not only did you divorce me, but you also took a house. Do you have any idea how this debt has all fallen on me? How am I supposed to pay it back?" I frowned. "The bankruptcy was something you told me about. And the divorce was your idea too," I agreed. "And now you're blaming me for it." Frank, provoked by my words, stiffened his neck and shouted, "If I told you to divorce, you just went along with it. Couldn't you have tried to talk me out of it?" His shamelessness made me laugh in anger. Hadn't I tried to persuade him? I even reached out to his friends and humbly begged him not to go through with the divorce, but he kept shoving the divorce papers in my face, again and again. Now that his lies had come true, the company really was bankrupt. He wasn't happy anymore. Seeing me silent, Frank felt he had the upper hand. "Fine, I won't make things hard for you. After all, we were once married. You'll have to pay back the 100 million debt for me, and return the money from the house you sold, then we'll be even. Otherwise, get ready to be hated by everyone." I refused his unreasonable demand and chased him out with a mop. I never expected he'd actually post the footage of me driving him out with the mop online. In the video, I looked furious, brandishing a broom and yelling at him to leave, while Frank, who'd taken a few hits, had no choice but to go. Folks, I'm really at my wit's end. I went to my ex-wife, begging her to return the house my mother left me, but she just chased me out with a broom. I can't take it anymore. Life is too hard. I don't understand how someone could change so much. We were fine before. Frank sobbed in his livestream while thanking viewers for their gifts. "Thank you for the gifts. You're all so kind. I'll never forget you. Oh, and could any big spenders send me a few super rockets?" Some viewers weren't fooled, though, and asked in the chat why his parents' house was under my name. Frank, of course, didn't dare admit he'd willingly given up the house and chose to ignore the question. After not watching a single livestream, he actually received quite a bit of money, while I, under his slander, became the target of public attacks. Countless people found my phone number and called to threaten me daily, some even shouting and threatening me in the middle of the night. My photos were photoshopped into black and white images with wreaths around them and posted online. My home address was also exposed, and many people came to my doorstep to curse at me, even writing on my door telling me to hurry up and die. Even my daughter was recognized at school by parents, teachers, and classmates because of this incident. They said, "This child is Vivian's daughter. Yeah, looks just like his mother, probably inherited her shamelessness too. Do you know how much your mother ruined your father? And here you are pretending nothing happened. What an ungrateful wretch." When I saw my daughter covered in dirt again, I snapped and posted that photo online. It showed Frank holding Linda in his arms, with Michael sitting on Frank's head, looking like a happy family of 3. Honestly, I should thank Linda. She's the one who sent me the photo, along with some taunting messages like, "Frank doesn't like you at all. Why are you clinging to him?" Today, he took me and our son out again. Something you'll never get to do. The photo quickly went viral, and some netizens caught on, Who's this woman? It's not Vivian. Judging by their poses in the photo, I guessed it might be Frank's mistress and illegitimate child. No way, Frank cheated. Some doubted the photo was photoshopped, but I didn't explain. Instead, I dropped another video. In it, Frank handed me divorce papers and a company share contract, saying the business was bankrupt and he wanted a divorce. I begged him to face it together, but Frank just kept insisting, "Don't hold me back." The scene shifts to me pleading with Frank's friend to convince him not to divorce, but Frank's friend shares the same attitude as Frank. Xiaoyu, Frank has made up his mind and doesn't want to hold you and the child back, just let him have his way. What follows is Frank resolutely deciding to divorce, packing his bags and leaving, while I chase after him, crying my heart out. The video ends with a photo of Frank and Li Shui without a marriage certificate. Everyone was stunned at this point. What did this mean? Wasn't it said that the woman was the one who initiated the divorce because she couldn't handle hardship? How did it turn out that the man was the one insisting on divorce? I didn't understand. So it was this man who filed for divorce. Why is he now slandering others? Immediately after, I took out the contract that Frank had me sign back then, which clearly stated the company would go to her, and the house to me. At this moment, someone claiming to be Frank's close friend also stepped forward, posting a clarification online. This person was none other than Jack. He bowed deeply to the camera and said, "Hello everyone, I am Frank's close friend, the one who advised Vivian to divorce Frank." Actually, I didn't agree with it at first, until Frank came to me. He told me his company hadn't actually gone bankrupt. He just wanted an excuse to divorce so he could be with another woman. He asked me, as his good friend, to help out. But now, seeing the undeserved suffering Vivian and her daughter have endured, my conscience is tormented, and I've chosen to come forward. Frank's close friend voluntarily stepped up to explain everything, and the truth was laid bare for all to see. Turns out, the devoted husband persona was fake. This man was a complete scumbag through and through. Fanpage, heaven truly has eyes. He lied to his wife, claiming his company went bankrupt. In reality, it hadn't. Talk about karma striking back in real life. Serves him right for cheating and still being dishonest. People like him deserve to die. Frank panicked. He tried to play the victim like before, but found himself cornered with no way out. This time, all the evil he'd done came back to bite him. The netizens, realizing they'd been deceived, only grew angrier, directing all their fury at Frank. Frank couldn't take it anymore. He came to me in tears, apologizing, saying he had only made a mistake in his actions, not as a person. "Lily, I truly know I was wrong. Let's make up." I smiled at him, thinking he looked as pitiful as a stray dog. "Frank, are you dreaming?" Seeing that I wouldn't budge, he tried to use our daughter. "What about Xiao Fu? You don't want her to grow up without a father, do you?" My daughter, who had been standing behind me, stepped forward. She didn't say a word, didn't even glance at Frank. "Mom, I don't have a father, I only have you." Frank, to pay off his bank debts, started borrowing money everywhere, robbing Peter to pay Paul, only to see the hole grow bigger. The loan sharks, who were never good people to begin with, threatened Frank, saying they'd send him to Africa if he couldn't repay. Frank got scared and wanted Linda to help him. But why would Linda agree? At that moment, I anonymously sent an email. Frank, after reading it, actually picked up a knife and stabbed Linda and Chen Xiaohao to death. "Great, so you two have been treating me like a fool, haven't you? I shouldn't have been fooled by you two scumbags." What I sent him was a paternity test, which showed Frank and Chen Xiaohao were not biologically related. Actually, I had known about Linda's existence all along. I even found out that he returned to the country because he had been messing around with a wealthy man abroad and was nearly beaten to death by the man's wife. Unable to survive overseas, he came back looking for a sucker to take the fall, and the child in his belly, it was someone else's. Later, Frank was sentenced to death. Before his execution, he said he wanted to see me one last time. I waved my hand dismissively. Why bother seeing me now? He didn't cherish what he had back then. And now that he regrets it, it's too late. I took my daughter and traveled across the beautiful landscapes of our homeland. Once, I asked her if she resented me for leaving her father. She shook her head, simply holding my hand and hugging me. though she said nothing, I understood what she meant. That's the end of today's story. If you liked this video, don't forget to subscribe. We will keep updating with more exciting stories and look forward to meeting you again next time.